true.
Exactly. No.
It is true.
All right. Are we ready to get into this thing? I think we are. All right. I know a lot of people are tuned in right now because I said yesterday we had I received an email from Darkside Phil after. Let me just kind of back up. So on Monday, I was kind of going through. I was casually mentioned, maybe it was earlier this month, on the 1st of this month. I just kind of casually mentioned who we're going to have on the show. We're going to have James, Angry Video Game Nerd. He's going to be a co-host. We're going to have Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers on the show. We're going to have Captain Agent reporting from Super Nintendo World. I also mentioned that we're going to have Darkside Phil on the show. And it was like pretty much immediately after, it was like my Twitter just blew up all day, and a clip went out of the show, and people were like, DSP is going to be on side scrollers, and this was like, I guess it was news to me that it was news to anybody else. I didn't really think it was like that big a deal, but apparently, and I didn't know this, like Darkside Phil doesn't do many interviews, right? I think the last one he did, I've been educated. There was the last one he did was with the Quartering, and that was like 3 years ago. And people were not super happy with how that interview went. They felt like it was kind of like softballs. And I'm like, I would say I'm 80% of the way through that interview, but I've also been watching like the retort to that by It's a Gundam. And the long and short of it is that I've received like a lot of lots of people saying like, well, you need to check out this. You need to check out this. And I spent over the last 2 days, I probably spent 12 hours doing research on this, which is a lot of research to do for one interview. And I'll continue to do interviews, right? Or continue to do research on this. But I wanted to, so Phil sent me an email, and I wanted to read it to you guys because he's like, hey, you can make this available to everybody. And because usually, in private correspondence, I'm not going to like share private correspondence, but Phil said you can share it. So I'm going to share it with you guys. And I'm going to share my response to it. And just so everybody's on the same page, because you guys know that I pride myself on transparency with the audience, with literally everything that we do. And we can kind of talk about this because I do think there's a larger conversation to be had here. But a lot of people have been saying, oh, Phil's going to cancel. Phil's going to cancel. Phil has given no indication that he's going to cancel. And a lot of people are saying that Phil's going to give you things you can't say and can't say. Phil's given no indication of things that we can and cannot talk about. So I'm just going to read this email, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to screen cap it or whatever. And that's fine. And but I took a screen cap of it because I didn't want to include his email on it. I didn't want to include my email on it. This is just a screen cap of it, but so you guys can take it out as well. So here we go. Let's check this out. So it says, hey man, listen to the show from today before I go to sleep, and you mentioned my appearance on the show. Then I see you get bombarded by comments on the video, and my haters, of course, bringing up their usual stuff and pretty much demanding you ask me all about it, or else you are just quote unquote softballing it. People have wanted to interview me for years, and I just stay in my lane making content for my audience and ignoring all the outside drama as much as I can. So that's why this is going to blow up. You're literally the first person since the Quartering to interview me, and that was many years ago, which I had no idea when I reached out to Phil. Like when I reached out to Phil, it was like, it was, like I said, I just kind of seen him from a distance on the peripheral, Darkside Phil is trending. I wonder why. Never actually like looked into why. It's like, oh, I remember Phil. I see references to him in like Gundam videos, right? Or just various videos, and that's where, like I said, he's like a meme lord, right? Because I thought people were just kind of making fun of him because it was kind of fun to make fun of Phil. So that's when I say he's like a meme lord, that's what I mean. Like people make fun of Phil. So anyways, let's continue. It says, I'm not going to give you any list of questions that will be off limits, and I'll answer everything to the best of my ability you can throw at me. But of course, but I also, of course, am not going to put myself or my family at risk with my answers. That is exactly the kind of thing my trolls have tried and tried again and always failed, which is why they are seeing this as just a new opportunity to quote expose me and somehow get me to either admit to something I've done, but I haven't, or else slip up and somehow admit something that will prove all their crazy conspiracy theories about me. Neither of these things are going to happen because the stuff they say about me from the last 5+ years is 99% untrue. I do have two concerns. Number one, my and my family's safety. These people have thoroughly doxed me, my wife, all of our personal data, including address, place of work, and cell phone numbers, plus my wife's personal history before we even met, in addition to my parents and other family members. It stands to reason that I don't want any of that stuff on the show, but I guarantee they'll be things like super chatting to try to get it on the screen or posting in your chat nonstop. I do need
sorry, that's a good way to get banned real quick. So just
I mean, with anybody, with any like yes. Like on any chat room, in any in any conversation, it doesn't matter if we're talking to Phil or anybody. Obama. It doesn't matter. Like the idea is that you post anybody's personal information and you're going to be banned.
Illegal. Doxing's illegal.
So he says, I do need a level of buy-in from you that this won't be a nonstop harass-a-thon where people are going to see our personal info on your streams because I'm on your show, and I feel that's a pretty reasonable request. Like I said, I don't care who I'm interviewing. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. And just me personally, I don't think that's unreasonable. And if anybody feels that's unreasonable, I don't really know what to tell you. Like, it's reasonable to expect privacy. It's reasonable to expect that your personal information isn't going to be leaked out online. Number two, I want this to not just be a show completely interrogating me. I really like you and your content over all these years. I'd very much like to share my story of being an original G1 and how we originally met at MagFest, which I didn't even know, if you remember, being 13 years ago, which I did not remember that. Did not remember that at all. It says, I'd like to be a normal part of your show, like every other guest has been. I'm okay with it, with a long segment about me, but I'll also be there to have fun with your normal antics. If that's okay, I'm still down to be on the show. And I know I'll be bombarded with questions about this tomorrow because you've now spilled the beans. I give you 100% permission to share this email with your audience and make your own judgments. And I hope you still have me on because I feel like we'll have a fun time. So that's kind of where it's at. So that was the email that he sent. But I do think it's important that I share my response to that email. Once again, in the interest of being transparent with everybody. So my response was this. It says, hey, Phil, yeah, it's been an interesting 24 hours. I'll say this. Your safety and your family's safety is of the utmost concern to me. We certainly won't allow any doxing or personal information to be shared in the chat. And if they are shared via super chat, we'll remove them. That's not cool in any scenario. And I stand by that. I don't think that's fair to anybody. I don't want this to be an interrogation either. I do think that there are some questions that should be asked and answered, and I expect you to answer them as best you can, as long as you don't put you or your family's family in harm's way. If you legally can't talk about something, just say you can't legally talk about it. I'm a fair interviewer, fair to me, fair to the person who's being interviewed, and fair to the audience. There is no right questions that can be asked. And I want to kind of elaborate on that even further. I know, I'll continue reading this. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to have you on and allowing us to talk. I do think that it would be ignorant for us to treat this like a normal show, especially the first time. We need to address the elephant in the room before we can treat things quote unquote normal, which I would love to get to. With all that said, I look forward to this challenge and I appreciate your trust. So that was my response to Phil's email. And I'll say this, so I clearly, like, when I reached out to Phil, I clearly didn't know that there are this many detractors. I guess that's the term, detractors, that are of Phil. And like, you can like or hate whoever you want online. That's fine. But I feel like I'm in a very tough situation to where I can ask everything that everybody has ever wanted to know about Phil, why he, if he's played WWE champions, how much he's spent on this game, his Patreon goals, which weren't fulfilled, or, all these, I mean, I have literally an entire Word doc of things, and I can ask literally all these questions, but somebody's going to be mad at me for not asking something in the way that they felt it should be asked. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to me. I don't think that's necessarily fair to anybody, right? So like I fully intend on doing this interview, but I want to be like honest with everybody. I'm going to do my best. I've spent a ton of time researching for this, learning about the critiques on Phil, learning Phil's responses. I think the biggest thing that I think that with all this, and I'll talk to Phil about this, is I think all this whole thing started, at least majority of it. A lot of people talk about this WWE Champions game. I think the biggest thing with it is, the amount of money that he supposedly spent. I think a lot of this starts with it's like a white lie. Like it started with like, hey Phil, do you play this game? This says this is your name on this game, and it looks like you spent a lot of money on this game, and nobody, and he could have just been like, yeah, I do. But instead he was like, no, and he kept doubling down, no.
To where add a little bit, just
sure.
Something. Anybody's bankruptcy information, that's not anybody else's business. That's not our business. And yes, you may say, well, it proves this, but you shouldn't have had that information anyway. You shouldn't have went digging for that information anyway. It's bankruptcy information is not your information to have.
Well, I'll say this, like, look, I think in the one of the things wrong with journalism, I think right now is people go in with an agenda. I don't want to enter any interview with an agenda, right? Like I want to go into an interview with questions, and I want those questions answered as best as we can. There's people say, oh, you can find this stuff, it's public information. I get it, right? And there are things like, why you see a lot of people say, he makes this amount of money per year. Why is he always poor? Why is he always asking for money? I don't know. Like that's a good question to ask. So look, I think that Adam, you said this best. I'm in a no-win situation here, right? I'm in a no-win situation where I'm going to do my best to deliver a great interview as best I can. Like I said, I walked into a snake pit, right? And I have snakes all around me. And I don't mean that like, the detractors are snakes in like, the metaphorical sense of like, bad people or anything like that. But, I'm walking into a trap, and I can figure out the solution, but I'm still going to leave with bruises, scrapes and bruises and stuff. And that concerns me. I want to do what's best for this show. I want to do what's best for me more than anything. Like I said, Phil's a guy that I've, he's been an acquaintance. Like I said, I haven't talked to him literally since his first email in well over a decade. So what's happened between then, I'm just now learning. But my ultimate responsibility is, for this show, for you guys, and for my family. So I want to do the best job I can possibly do. I'm going to do the best job I can possibly do. And when I say I'm in a no-win situation, it's because ultimately, no matter what I do, people aren't going to be happy with it. And I think that's kind of the most sobering aspect of this, because I realize I'm on the internet and people are going to do their best to, people are going to do their best to critique literally everything I say right now. People are going to critique it, because I have somehow stepped into this lore, which I didn't mean to by any means. I'm just a dude who likes to talk video games, and that's it. So that's kind of where it's at. So I'm going to do my best. I'm working with as many detractors as I possibly can. I've DM'd several of them to say, like, what would you like asked? And I will ask those questions, but I'm going to ask them in a polite way. I'm not going to shine the light on this guy and you need to say this. Like, I'm going to be respectful to his time. And, but with that said, that doesn't mean they're going to be softball questions. I do think that there's questions that need to be asked, and that there's questions that should be answered. So that's kind of where it's at. So
I'm going into all of this. I don't know anything about who this guy is. I heard the DSP before. I didn't even know what it was referring to. Now I know that it's a person. I didn't, before you said we're going to interview DSP, and I'm like, what is that? And then now I'm basically learning everything as I go along here. So I see a lot of people in chat that are clearly upset that you're even talking to him, and then clearly they already have a lot of info about him that they know about. I mean, I personally know people that I've worked with in the YouTube internet space that have turned out to be liars and cheats and frauds, and it's like it's pretty shitty when you find out that the person that you thought who they were isn't, or at least they were hiding who they really were. It's like it's really fucking shitty. So yeah, but I still really don't know much about him other than what you guys have mentioned, and it's like so.
Well, so here's like, so this is a great example. So Shinko says, now ask him about the lying. That's all we care about. So if I go to Phil and I say, tell me about the lying.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how's he going to respond?
Yeah.
Like if
Well,
you guys,
he already said in his email that 99% of what they're saying is a lie. So it's like he's, that doesn't sound. I mean that sounds pretty inaccurate to me.
Well, look,
according to the hate that he's getting. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's some things that are true about what they're saying. I don't know if it's all true, but
there's always this side, and then there's always this side, and then there's the truth.
Right.
And we all know that, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that, Phil's saying, 99% of the stuff they say is wrong, right? I'm sure it's not nearly 99%, right? And
but
I'm sure people say, go ahead.
From his perspective, it is 99% because you know what I'm saying, if that makes any kind of sense.
Right, exactly.
Because he sees what he wants to see.
So anyways, right. I think at the end of the day, like I'm just going to do the best I can, right? And there are people who like revolve their online presence around Phil, and if that's what they want to do, that's awesome. That's great. Do your thing. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure I do the best job I can, and I don't want to harm this show or you guys or me or my family because of a stupid interview, right? And I mean that endearingly, right? Like this is just going to be one segment on a show that happens Monday through Friday, for an entire year, every day, so like this is one part of the show, and I'm excited for this. I think this is a really big challenge, but I honestly feel that given like the immediate like wave of just like over the last 2 days, I don't think I'm in a situation where I can be successful at all, regardless of how successful I truly am.
It's one of them things like after I said that bankruptcy is not people's business, people say, well, it's a matter of public record. Just because something's a matter of public record does not mean that you should go post it in a chat. So just because your information is, so what if Darkside Phil did that to all the people who dislike him? What if he went and got your information about your bankruptcy or went and found your parents' address? You know what I'm saying? So hypocrisy is my problem. You know what I mean?
Apparently, according to chat, he did, in fact, do that.
Right. They said he doxed somebody. So here's the issue, right? So they're all upset that he did that, but then they do it to him. You see my problem? And that's my issue here.
Well, so like, and if he doxed somebody, I'll ask him about that. Why did you do that? Why did you think that's okay? Do you think it's hypocritical of you to dox somebody when you're upset? That's like,
it's a good question then.
Well, a legal issue is also different than a moral issue.
Right. But
the world is immoral. I'm just saying that.
But it's important to ask those questions, right? If he did do those things, why? Why did you do that? Like I think doxing, personally, I think doxing should be illegal, and punishable by the most extent.
I thought it was. That's why I said it before, but no, it's apparently allowed still, amazingly.
Right. Phil says
it's against almost every platform.
Yeah, most of them, and then it'll lead to like illegalities, like harassment, etc.
And this is actually a really important question. So Phil says, Phil Collins, and I've seen him on Twitter. He says Phil made his financials his viewers' business by begging for money and crying poor, making $100K a year. So, and I mean this like I'm genuinely asking, what makes him different than every other streamer?
Exactly,
because streamers ask for your subs. They talk about super chats or bits or whatever. like,
so why is his financial information so much their business, but say PewDiePie's isn't, or Mr. Beast, or you know what I'm saying?
And I mean that. I like how is that different? I'm genuinely asking. I'm not trying to be like play you as a fool. I'm genuinely asking how is it different, and saying
well,
like really
if he's taking advantage of people and lying about it and milking it for you know lying and saying like, oh, I'm hurting, and then people tugging on their heartstrings and taking advantage of them, that isn't okay. And then of course the people who watch him, who did support him, then suddenly it's like, bro, you were lying the whole time. You are doing good. I fucking supported you.
Well, I think that doing good is also a matter of perspective as well.
I think
he may had he may had $1 million mortgage with a monthly mortgage payment of $3,000 a month. Well, he ain't making that $3,000 a month to everybody else. That seems like a lot of money for mortgage, but he has this mortgage he has to pay. You see my point?
$1 million mortgage. So,
right. I'm just giving an example, but
I think so. There's a lot in there, right? The idea that you have you're being supported by your audience, right? And the question is, what are you spending your money on to where you have to constantly come back to ask your audience for money, right? And as I've done my research, the consistent theme along here is when he went into bankruptcy court, he says he spends about $5,000 a month for business expenses, right? And the assumption is that $5,000 a month is spent on microtransactions for mobile games, because the assumption is that he's very addicted to mobile games. He has a gambling problem. And so when he's been asked about those things,
does he use it for content?
I don't know, but that's the thing is, like I said, I haven't watched a stream of his. I don't know if I'm sure he does play mobile games on his stream, whatever. But that's beyond the point. The idea that, if you're spending $5,000 a month on mobile games and you're constantly asking your community for money, I don't think it's unfair for them to say, look, you said you needed this big push lined up with the big release of this game. Talk about that. Why? And was this just coincidence? If so, it's an odd coincidence. The idea that you needed money for this new shower head, or whatever. There's an instance like that, and he needed to pay $1,000, but it also lined up with a special event in the game where he was going to spend money. Things like that. There's these very, very interesting coincidences, and like I said, those are questions that I think need to be asked. There's also questions like, there's accusations of him. There's video of him saying things that would be considered sexist, homophobic, racist, things like that. As well as taking advantage of handicapped people. That's the phrase that I've seen. So, these are all, like I said, these are all questions that need to be asked. And
I like that, because somebody disagrees with me. I'm dumb now.
Right. Well, welcome to the internet.
The chat is everything for a streamer. I've been streaming for a couple years now, and I wouldn't be able to continue doing it without my chat. If they suddenly found out that like I was taking advantage of them and lying about certain things that, I don't even ask my audience for money. I feel weird doing that. I feel weird asking them to subscribe, because it feels, I don't know. I want people.
You're not supposed to.
Regardless, people do it anyway. And I don't feel like it doesn't feel right for me to do that. But I understand. And I personally know people that take advantage of their audience and see their audience as dollar signs and don't see them as the reason why they're successful. So when you make that switch and no longer see people on the other side and just see dollar signs, it ruins your, not necessarily your credibility, but the connection that you have with the people that actually watch you. And when they find out that you're taking advantage of them and lying to them, it's just, people are pissed about it. So I'm sensing that energy. And I, as I said, like I know people in this space that have done that, and some have been called out on it and are still successful, surprisingly. And, some watchers out there don't even care, and it's kind of sad, but I don't know. I don't like the vibe of taking advantage. I love my chat, and I want to support them as much as they support me. So
according to that doc that one of somebody shared with us, I watched the whole thing, and it said that he lost his monetization on YouTube because he was asking people to do things like click this or donate here and all that. And apparently you're not allowed to do that.
So early on in the YouTube Partner Program, like a decade ago, he put together he said like, hey, it'd be really great if you guys could support me by doing, the monetization wasn't a thing, the super chats, things like that. So the best way to support a creator was clicking ads. And he more or less said, hey, like, don't click the ads, wink, 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 type of thing. And I saw the video of it. Like I said, I've done a ton of research on this, like an ungodly amount of research in the last 2 days. And he definitely skirted the rules by being like, hey, definitely don't do this. And people did it. And it may have been him for all I know. I don't know. But he talked about how he made a lot of money in the early days of YouTube. And then it dried up during the adpocalypse. And that's why he went to streaming and, becoming a full-time streamer and stuff. So like there's a lot here, man. There's a lot here. And I think the biggest thing with all this is that, like, we talk about the shark feeding frenzy, right? That we just watched. That's what I feel like I'm surrounded by, right? Right now. And there's a lot of people who want answers, and I'm going to do my best to give you those answers.
I want to say something though. If this guy, if Craig clearly wants to ask the questions that people want to ask this guy, if this is, let's just say all this stuff is true and this guy is a I don't know, abuser of his chat, like using and taking advantage of people and doing all this stuff. And Craig's like, he's saying, I'm going to ask this guy these questions. The email said, we just read it, or Craig read it earlier. He's like, ask me anything, just, keep my family out of it, which I absolutely, I'm 100% for. All right, keep the family out, but we got to ask some hard questions, because obviously people are pissed off about what you've done in the past or allegedly done. We want to hear it from you. So wouldn't you want that to happen? Wouldn't you, or is it like a comfortable space right now where you could just stay angry? Because I feel like him coming on this show and Craig actually asking him these tough questions, and I'm skeptical. Like I need to obviously do some research, but I kind of want to see what he has to say if this is all the shit's going down.
So for your question, is that from our perspective, the audience perspective, or his? Wouldn't you asked, wouldn't you want that from whose perspective? The audience?
The pissed off people.
Yeah.
That he fucking took advantage of.
I would think the same
supposedly
thing.
Took advantage of, it's like, I don't know.
But from what I'm reading is they don't want it because they think he's just going to answer with bullshit anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if the question isn't satisfactory or the answer isn't satisfactory, then I'll ask him.
There's follow up.
Yeah, it's like I don't. You guys got to remember, I have a degree in journalism, right? I was taught how to interview people. I love interviewing people. Most of my interviews I've ever done throughout my career, they've been wacky and fun. But I think this is that's why I haven't backed out of this, because I think that there's a tremendous challenge to this. And I think that the challenge, walking into a shark den is very intriguing. And I think probably the first question that I would ask of Phil is, it seems like many of his detractors are former fans, are former viewers. Why do you think that is? Why is that? And I think that's a very fair opening question.
Yeah,
it's a good start.
His mod was apparently the person he doxed, from my understanding of it as well.
Right, and but I think that's a question that I think is reasonable, and it's a great starting point. And I would say, like, just for those who are in the chat right now who are his detractors, how many of y'all used to watch Phil? And I'm asking, just say like I did in the chat, because like these there's obviously a severe amount of angst and anger there between that was damaged. There was a relationship that was there before, and now that relationship has been damaged severely, like severely. There's severe danger, and you know, whoever's fault it is, it's not mine to judge, but it is important to ask those questions, you know. And you see, like, so many people, I did. A lot of people raised their hands, right? And for those who never did watch him, why do you have that angst on Phil? If you've never actually watched him, why do you have that angst?
I don't think there would be this negative energy about him unless they were, you know, if they weren't his fans. I don't think it would be quite this fervent. You know what I'm saying?
I think they feel betrayed.
Yeah,
but at some point, right? And I think that's understandable, right? You know,
and I hope nobody gets the feeling that I don't find a lot of the things that he's been accused of morally wrong. I do. It's just I haven't seen necessary proof of a lot of the things, and the things that I have seen some proof of, a lot of times the way that the proof was gained was very hypocritical, and people would give people shit for doing that any other time. But because he's such a bad guy, then it's okay.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of folks in the chat will say, you know, have you asked about, like, there's I guess a guy named Derek who was like a whale for his donator, somebody who donates a lot of money. You know, and somebody pointed me to his Twitter profile, and it's filled with all sorts of like porn and things like that. And it's like, ooh, you know,
must be an OnlyFans guy or something.
I guess, I don't know, but you know, it's tough, right? There's obviously, I'll say this, like, in any community, not every community has golden rays of sunshine in it, right? There's always dark, shady corners, right? And there's dark, and you're gonna, like, I would like to think that every G2 in our community is awesome, but I'm sure that we have a couple pieces of shit. Let's just be real. Let's just be real. It just from a strictly odds perspective, right? You know, we have people from all across the spectrum that watch us, and I think that's amazing. Now, it's a matter of I think it's a matter of how you know, it goes back to the relationship you have with your audience, right? And the trust that they have with you, and that's something that is really important. You know, Adam talked about that, having that relationship with his audience, and the trust is associated with it. I think that with anybody who's been online, that's like paramount. And I think that's probably the biggest thing here is what caused that trust to break. What is it? Is it one thing? Is it because it seems like there's a ton of things here, and it's just a lot, man. It's just a lot, and I'm really I'm not intimidated by this challenge at all. I think this challenge is really exciting, but I do understand what I'm getting into. But like I said, the last thing that I would want to do is put you guys in harm's way, put my family in harm's way, just like anybody, you know, whether it's myself or Pokemon doing this interview or Drama Alert doing this interview. Like, that's a question I wanted to ask. Like, the Drama Alert guy, apparently he offered Phil $50,000 to do an interview, right? Like, why did you not accept that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Keemstar's kind of a dick, but besides that,
right. So I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna tell you, I'm gonna do my best, and at the end of the day,
expect your best.
Right. And at the end of the day, I'm going to do my best, and I know that my best isn't going to be good enough for some people, and I just hope that you accept that. But I'm going to ask the questions that I feel need to be asked. I'm going to talk with the people that I feel that want questions that need to be asked. So just provide me some leeway. I'm on nobody's side here. I'm not on Phil's side. I'm not on your side. The only side I'm on is Travis's side, Blab's side, Adam's side, and the G2 community side. That's the side that I'm on, and that's the way that I'm going to approach this thing. because there are questions that need to be asked. So
I think you nailed. I think you said it all. I think I think we can move on.
I think so too. But like I said, I appreciate you guys popping in. I know you're passionate about it. I'm going to do my best to deliver as best I possibly can. So, all right, let's move on.